Thank you very much. So we're now moving to item 22, District Plan Amendment, Lyttelton Parking, draft section 65 proposal for consultation. Now, as I had indicated, I've got a conflict of interest with this item. So having declared that interest, I'd now like to move that James Goff be appointed chairperson of the meeting for this item, and the reason for that is that James is the acting chair of the Regulatory and Performance Committee, which is the committee that would hold this work if it was at a committee. So that's what I'd like to do, and that's my reasoning for it. Do I have a seconder? Tim Scanderett. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried.
Thanks, Andrew. If you don't, I'll just stay here for this. It's just one item. Take it as read. Long story very short, I think you're all familiar with it because we dealt with it at committee, for those of you on that, and also you'll have visibility of it at council. It's essentially seeking to move, to make a district plan change and consult with the relevant stakeholders so we can move this forward. Pre-quake, there weren't the parking provisions there. Post-quake, with the replacement district plan, it was inserted. That's proven prohibitive to development in Lyttelton, just due to the topography and a number of other reasons there. So it seems like a logical step, and with your endorsement, we'll just move forward to consult with relevant stakeholders and tidy this up. So namely DPMC, ECAN, and the two district councils, Waimakariri and Selwyn, and also the local Runanga. Staff here to answer any questions. So Ivan and team, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Don't think so.
No, happy to.
No. Well, with that, I'll open it up for questions. Questions from anyone? Pauline?
Any of the buildings that were there pre-quake that are not there anymore have on-site parking, or do they all just use the on-street parking?
Generally, no
Right.
on-site parking.
So nothing would change them compared to what it was before.
That's right.
And the feedback was generally supportive, except for
maybe 3 pieces of feedback, something like that, which were mostly concerned with the effects of the proposal for on-street parking in Lyttelton Town Centre.
Because of the just the general parking in Lyttelton.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Sarah.
Thank you. I mean, my understanding is that this has come about because of some specific rebuilds that are looking to happen in the area and that have been, brought to council staff's attention. We've got other areas of the city, these other suburban centres as well, which have struggled in some of them to get some of the rebuilds. There used to be a whole pile of smaller shops in Linwood Village, for example, that didn't have on-street parking and now off-street parking, and now there's requirements for them to have it. But with small titles, that's really difficult. Are we looking at a plan changes for other areas as well?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's a good point you've made, Councillor, that we've had to consider the precedent effect as well. So why are we just picking on Lyttelton? Yeah. And it's got particular circumstances that are set out in the report. There may well be other centres that were earthquake affected, and I think the council which should perhaps consider whether or not there are any issues around those centres as well. It's a matter of where we stop in terms of, as Katie said originally, none of the local or neighbourhood centres had minimum parking requirements. So we're only putting them back for this one because of special circumstances. If the council wants to consider a review of that, then there's obviously a process to go through in doing that.
Yeah, because one of the things that we're trying to do is to keep these local neighbourhood centres viable and operating so that people don't have to drive as far, so they can walk to their local shops rather than driving to bigger areas and creating sort of traffic chaos there. So the original proposal through the district plan process was actually to do all of those suburban centres, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yep. And do we have much of a sort of really clear idea about why they didn't?
Well, looking at the panel, well, actually David may want to comment on this as well, actually, because you were involved, weren't you?
Yeah, I think, and this is the reason why, one of the reasons why we've limited it to Lyttelton. The issue that the panel grappled with is how far do you go? So for little small neighbourhood centres, this makes a lot of sense because a lot of people walk to the centres. They were concerned that we were applying it to larger centres such as Merivale, Barrington and the like, and they were saying there's not the same for those kind of centres. So there's over 100 centres in Christchurch. So we will have to, if we do this, we'll have to decide how small is too small to allow this, and and where are the big ones that we need to provide parking, and so that will be a fine line. And so at the moment we've limited it to Lyttelton because that's quite discreet. And obviously it's a community that people can walk. If we want to do it further, we'll have to have rationale as to why some and not others.
Yeah. So if we maybe with this on, could we ask for some advice on the potential for doing it for other small suburban centres which are struggling to rebuild post-quake, or something along those words, so that we're not going too big, and we get some advice back on whether we should do it for other centres.
Would you like that as an addition, Sarah?
Yeah, can we do that?
We can do that. Let's get it moved and seconded first. So I'm in agreement with that. So I'm happy to move. Sarah, will you second?
Second, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, and then we can add a very sensible addition, which is that essentially staff monitor.
We'll request staff advice on a similar change in other smaller suburban centres.
Yep.
Facing similar issues.
And we probably don't need a time frame around that, as long as staff are aware of it. I guess.
Yeah, we'll get on. We'll have a look at the work program.
I guess inherently it's a moving feast anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if we could capture something along those lines, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Great. Well, it's moved and seconded. Oh, Yanni, do you have a question?
Just wanted to check because I, endorse using the legislation, this process. But are we getting a list of the ones that we're actively pursuing and the time and the budget costs?
List of
what, sorry?
Sorry, just under 4.7, we're told that there's a number of things happening. We've got, there's other work programs around using the GCR. So I'm just trying to understand when we see that work program, because like Councillor Temple's just talked about, for getting further advice, but I'm also mindful that there's other issues that we've raised previously that we have no visibility about if they're going through this process and how we progress them.
Yes, well, Katie, there's probably things you could say, but you might recall the Cranford Regeneration Plan was done under that Act.
Yeah.
We've done the
Redcliffe
School.
I'm just trying to look forward, like with number 4, is, how do we know in terms of you've got limited planning capacity, so have we got a list of kind of things that we're working through? So like we get the advice back, but then, it's going to take 5 years. You go, well, there's no point because this legislation is going to be gone, hopefully.
You mean that? So at the moment, there's no other proposals that we're planning to use Section 71 for. The reason for that is we've now got our powers back under the district plan. So we are... We've got some of the powers to use the district plan, and there's a streamlined planning process that the government put in place, which is similar to this kind of proposal. Using Section 71, you have to prove that it's necessary and it's for regeneration. So but using the streamlined process and the normal plan change, you don't have to use that test. So. We're proposing to put all the other plan changes through that process at the moment. We've got a priority list of plan changes that's been workshopped with the Regulatory Performance Committee, and we'll bring a report back on progress on that.
So like our board's had a community meeting where I think people are quite keen to see what the work program is, but that workshop hasn't been held. But just under 4, it may be worth just specifying what legislation you're going to look at that advice through.
Well, I think it would be a case-by-case basis. Obviously, we can only use the Regeneration Act where there's a regeneration issue. So for those centres that have faced earthquake damage, that may be an option. If you want to apply it to wider centres that are struggling but not directly a result of earthquake.
I'll be a bit more clear. I'm just trying to
think it's
narrow it
preferable
down.
to leave it open, because then that gives our staff the ability to look at the most effective method possible to get the change that's required. So if you start stipulating things, then you may be cutting your nose off to spite your face. So I'm comfortable with the staff answer.
I just worry that 4 is too broad and in terms of the work that we get staff to do, unless we're very clearly defined, we end up running the risk of duplication with DCL, duplication with Regenerate, and suburban master plans. And so I just really wanted to have under 4, I guess, just some kind of greater clarity over what exactly we're asking staff, because I don't know how staff could actually just I mean, I don't know where they'd go away and start even doing that. It doesn't mention geographic areas. It doesn't show what legislation they make the assessment
I
on.
think it allows us to be proactive around that space, and it gives staff a bit of scope to be able to find mitigations that are most appropriate for those areas. So from my position as the mover, and as long as Sarah's comfortable, I'm happy with that wording there. If you want to propose something else, you're welcome to. Well, I don't think that in all honesty, I think that this is a moving feast, and there isn't a defined time. And again, stipulating something, with timeframes on it just narrows it down and could probably hamstring us. So again, I'd probably prefer not to, because then we can address it when or where appropriate. Tim, did you have a question?
Not a question. I was just going to speak in support of it.
Oh, great. Okay, we'll close off questions now and move to debate. Tim, do you want to debate?
Thank you. Look, I'm going to support this, and I'm going to support number 4. We've got, it is a moving feast. We've got some small areas in Philomine area with regards to Selwyn Street shops, Beckenham shops. The moving into 2021, when the RMA change, or the allowances change for home-run businesses having to go back into community shopping or areas like that, key activity areas, that's going to be so important and give a new life to these areas, hopefully, because there's no life in them now. And there's a reason for that, because people are saving money operating from home. So we've got to be able to be fluid when these things happen. Addington is a different issue. It is an issue in the sense that those big companies leaving that community, going back into the central city, is going to leave a vacuum. What's the shape of that in the future? We've got to allow our staff to move a bit. We should also be able, as councillors, to request support from council staff to look in certain areas, and that's what we'll do, and I believe this allows us to do that, so thank you.
Excellent. Right, it's moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thanks. And Andrew, back to you.